The Galactic Council had ruled the known universe for 17,000 years. Their empire stretched across 900 inhabited worlds, and their military fleet numbered in the millions. The 12 High Commanders sat in their crystalline chamber on the capital world of Vareth Prime, confident in their absolute power over all sentient life. They had conquered 47 species. They had ended civilizations that refused to bow. They had never known defeat, and they believed they never would. When their scouts first discovered the small blue planet on the edge of the Orion Arm, they dismissed it as insignificant. The primitive inhabitants had barely reached their own moon. Their technology was laughable by galactic standards. Their weapons could not even scratch the hull of a basic Varathian transport ship. The High Commanders gave the standard order for subjugation: send the invasion fleet, demand surrender, absorb another species into their collection of servants. Admiral Karth, the youngest of the High Commanders at only 300 years old, was given the honor of leading the subjugation fleet. He took 5,000 warships, more than enough to conquer 100 primitive worlds. His officers joked about how quickly this mission would end. Some bet on whether the humans would surrender before or after the first demonstration of Varathian firepower. None of them imagined what was about to happen. The fleet arrived in the solar system and positioned itself in orbit around the third planet. Admiral Karth opened a communication channel to every nation on the surface below. His translators had worked for weeks to learn the dominant languages of this species. He delivered the standard ultimatum that had worked on dozens of worlds before: surrender unconditionally. Accept Varathian rule. Become productive members of the Galactic Empire. Resistance would result in the complete destruction of their civilization. The humans did not respond for 6 hours. Admiral Karth assumed they were debating among themselves, arguing about whether to fight or submit. He had seen this before. Primitive species often needed time to accept their situation. He waited patiently, watching the planet rotate slowly beneath his flagship. When the response finally came, it was not what anyone in the fleet expected. The message was exactly 2 words long. No formal greeting, no diplomatic language, no negotiation or plea for mercy. Just 2 words that would echo through galactic history forever. The message said, "Come down." Admiral Karth stared at his communication screen for a long moment. His officers exchanged confused glances. The translation team confirmed they had not made an error. The humans had really sent just 2 words in response to an ultimatum from the most powerful empire in the galaxy. Some officers laughed nervously. Others suggested the humans simply did not understand the situation. A few recommended immediate orbital bombardment to teach them respect. Admiral Karth chose a different approach. He decided to demonstrate Varathian superiority in person. He would land a ground force, crush whatever resistance the humans offered, and capture their leaders. He would make an example of this arrogant species. He ordered 50,000 soldiers to prepare for planetary assault. The landing craft descended through the atmosphere and touched down near one of the larger human settlements. The Varathian soldiers emerged in their powered armor, carrying weapons that could level buildings with a single shot. They expected the humans to flee in terror at the sight of them. They expected quick surrender or pathetic resistance. What they encountered instead was something the Varathian military had never faced in its entire history. The humans did not run. They did not hide. They came out to meet the invaders with weapons that should have been useless against Varathian armor. And then the killing began. The first wave of soldiers fell within minutes. The humans fought with a ferocity that defied all logic. They used every advantage their plan offered. They knew the terrain. They had prepared defenses. They attacked from buildings and tunnels and hidden positions. They did not stop fighting when they were wounded. They did not surrender when surrounded. They kept fighting until they could not move. Admiral Karth received the casualty reports with growing disbelief. He sent more soldiers. They died. He sent armored vehicles. The humans destroyed them with improvised explosives. He ordered air support. The humans shot down his aircraft with missiles that should not have been able to track Varathian technology. By the end of the first day, he had lost 10,000 soldiers and gained nothing. The reports from the ground painted a picture that made no sense to anyone in the fleet. Varathian soldiers described humans who kept fighting with broken bones and bleeding wounds. They described coordinated attacks that seemed to come from nowhere. They described a species that apparently had no concept of acceptable losses. One captured human, badly injured and barely conscious, had looked at his Varathian captors and laughed. He told them they had no idea what they had started. Admiral Korath continued the assault for 3 weeks. He lost 80% of his ground forces. His air power was nearly depleted. His soldiers were refusing to continue fighting. They reported something the Varathian military had never documented in any previous conquest. They said the humans were enjoying this. They said the humans had been waiting for someone to fight. The admiral finally ordered a retreat. His remaining forces fled back to orbit. He stared down at the blue planet that had humiliated the greatest military force in the galaxy and felt something completely unfamiliar. He felt afraid. His report to the High Council was delivered in person. He stood before the 12 commanders and described everything that had happened. He showed them footage of the battles. He presented the casualty figures. He explained that his entire invasion force had been effectively destroyed by a species with inferior technology. The council listened in silence. When he finished, the council demanded an explanation. How could this have happened? The humans had no fleet. They had no energy weapons. They had no interstellar capability. How could they have defeated a Varathian assault force? Admiral Korath answered with the only explanation he had been able to develop. The humans were not like other species. They did not calculate the odds of survival before fighting. They did not measure acceptable losses. They had evolved on a planet that tried to kill them constantly. They had spent their entire history fighting each other in wars of unimaginable violence. They had developed weapons specifically designed to kill millions of their own kind. And they were always ready for another fight. The council debated for days. Some argued for orbital bombardment. Destroy the humans from space where they could not fight back. Others worried about the unknown capabilities the humans might possess. If their ground forces were this effective, what else might they have hidden? A faction suggested quarantine. Surround the system and let the humans remain isolated forever. In the end, the council made a decision. They would send one final message to the humans. They would offer peace. They would recognize human sovereignty. They would never return to the human system. It was the first time in 17,000 years that the Varathian Empire had offered peace to a species they had tried to conquer. The message was carefully crafted by their finest diplomats. It was 3 pages long. It expressed respect for human courage. It acknowledged mistakes. It proposed a treaty of non-aggression that would last for eternity. It was sent with great ceremony and solemnity. The human response arrived 1 hour later. Once again, it was exactly 2 words long. The council read the message and understood immediately that everything had changed. The words burned themselves into their minds and haunted their dreams for the rest of their lives. The message said, "We're coming." The council chamber erupted into chaos. Some commanders demanded immediate military mobilization. Others called for evacuation of the capital. The oldest among them, High Commander Varath, the 23rd, simply sat in silence and stared at the 2 words on his screen. He understood what the others were only beginning to realize. The humans had not won by luck or accident. They had won because fighting was what they did. War was their natural state. The brief period of peace on their world had been an anomaly, a temporary pause while they developed new weapons and waited for a worthy opponent. The Varathian invasion had given them exactly what they wanted. Intelligence reports began flooding in over the following months. The humans were building ships. They were adapting captured Varathian technology. They were studying the weapons and armor taken from dead soldiers. Their progress was impossibly fast. What should have taken centuries of development was happening in years. The humans were not just learning, they were improving. They were making Varathian technology better than the Varathians ever had. The Empire tried to prepare. They built new fleets. They reinforced their defenses. They trained millions of soldiers. But the fear had already spread. Stories of the human victory traveled across all 900 worlds. Subject species began to whisper about rebellion. Varathian soldiers started questioning whether they could defeat the approaching enemy. The Empire's confidence shattered before a single human ship crossed its borders. The first human fleet arrived at a Varathian colony world 3 years after the failed invasion of Earth. It was a small fleet by galactic standards, only 200 ships. But those ships carried technology that made the Varathian commanders stare in disbelief. The humans had taken everything captured from the invasion force and transformed it into something terrifying. Their weapons hit harder. Their shields held longer. Their tactics were unpredictable and devastating. The colony fell in 6 hours. The humans did not bomb it from orbit. They did not slaughter the population. They simply landed, defeated every military unit that opposed them, and broadcast a message to the rest of the Empire. The message was 3 words this time. They said, "You are next." The Empire crumbled faster than anyone thought possible. World after world fell to the human advance. Subject species rose up against their Varathian rulers. Soldiers deserted. Commanders surrendered before fighting. The entire structure of the galactic order collapsed because of 2 words sent by a primitive species that should have been easy to conquer. High Commander Vareth the 23rd lived long enough to see human ships in orbit above his capital world. He stood in the same crystalline chamber where his ancestors had ruled for thousands of years. He watched the human ambassador walk through the doors and stand before him. The ambassador was young, confident, and showed no fear of the ancient empire he had helped to destroy. The High Commander asked one question before the formal surrender. He needed to understand. He asked why the humans had sent such a short reply to the original ultimatum. Why only 2 words? The ambassador smiled. The answer was simple. Humans did not waste words when action would speak louder. They had said exactly what they meant. They had invited the Empire to come down and fight. And when the Empire had foolishly accepted that invitation, it had sealed its own fate. The surrender was signed that day. The Empire that had ruled for 17,000 years was officially dissolved. The humans took their place as the dominant power in the galaxy. And throughout the occupied territories, in every language spoken by every species, the story spread of how 2 words had destroyed an empire. Those 2 words became a warning for anyone who might think about threatening humanity in the future. They remained carved into monuments and written in histories for 10,000 years after the Varathian Empire was forgotten. They served as a reminder that sometimes the shortest messages carry the heaviest weight. And they proved that humanity would never back down from a fight they did not start but would absolutely finish.